Perfect. Welcome to the Kiwanis Club of Indianapolis. I am so grateful that we can get together on Zoom and in person and in service to the community and just all of the ways that we're able to connect. I've been doing a lot of traveling for work the last several weeks, I don't know how long. First and foremost, thank you to everybody that's been taking the reins on the meeting, helping hold down the fort, all of that. But one of the things that I've noticed as I've gone around are the service clubs that are out in our community, Kiwanis, Evil Rotarians, Lions, all of those, and just the unique ways that they serve the community, the kids, and the folks that have really depended on them for decades. And it's been kind of nice to spend a little bit of my road time reflecting on their role in their local communities, but then how much we've been able to do in Indy. And I know we work with dozens of schools, every corner of the city, which I think makes us really unique and special, but also presents a lot of challenges for us. But just watching the way that our boards, the club and the foundation board and our individual members, our committee chairs have all stepped up to meet the needs that keep presenting themselves. Some of our programs have been in existence for 50, 60, 70 years, and some of them have come to fruition in the last few and have really been refined. I'm really grateful for what we've created here and how we show up and how we can be part of a bigger community doing really great things. So that is my ramble for today. I just very much appreciate all of you. And I think, that's very much in line with our speaker for today of, doing good in the areas that we can. With that, I would like to turn the mic over briefly to Mary Bulk to lead us in today's invocation. And then I'll come back with some club announcements.
Thank you, Trina. Give strength to those awaiting transplantation, whose bodies betray them, whose spirit abandons them, waiting, hoping, praying for the gift of life. Give strength to the relatives and friends of those waiting transplantation, who dearly love them, who steadfastly care for them, waiting, hoping, praying for the gift of life. Give strength to the grieving families considering organ donation. Help them find comfort in the power to end the wait, to fuel the hope, to answer their prayers by saying yes to the gift of life. Give our loved ones the strength to live on through the miracle of transplantation and the legacy of organ donation.
Thank you so much. Quick welcome to any of our guests today. If anybody wants to introduce themselves in the chat, I think we just have members on here, but again, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. A couple members celebrating big anniversaries this week. Tom Grinslade is marking 58 years as a Kiwanian. Ted Mao is celebrating 35 years. Past President Rush Yelverson is 31 years. President-elect designate Eric Rowland is 28 years. Bill Murphy at a nice round 30. And Jeffrey Moon, 16 years. And former club treasurer Jeremy Kopak celebrating a dozen years of service to Kiwanis. Mary, I'll kick it back to you for a quick announcement, and then I'm happy to continue on.
Okay. So I want to thank everyone who shared their ideas for the coming year. If you weren't able to attend the session, if you'd like to provide feedback, please reach out to me. Look for more information to be shared in a mailing later this month, along with your commitment to the club. A reminder that past presidents will be convening Friday morning to make their selections for the annual Career and Civic Awards, which have been presented for more than 60 years. The foundation board met yesterday and has earmarked more money for our 2024 community grants. Please join me in sharing the application with community partners. We will be extending grants up to $5,000 for the creation or expansion of initiatives that directly impact youth in Marion County to up to 10 organizations. If you'd like to assist with reviewing the applications in late October, please let me know or let Kelly know. 8 Lincoln Chair Wendy Paddock is ready to start planning for the 8 Lincoln Awards. So Saturday, which are Saturday, January 13th, has been reserved at Butler Lacey School of Business to meet nominees, and the big event is on Friday, February 9th. The Butler Lacey facility is just fabulous, so we hope those who are on the committee can attend. Roger? Lunch at Iozo's?
Yes, it's coming Monday, August 17th, I believe. No,
21st.
21st, excuse me.
And
We'll
what
be
time
having-
is that?
We'll
What
be
time?
having lunch at Iozo's.
What time is that?
Yes, 11:30 to 1 typically. We try to
11:30
get
to
in
1.
there now there, but we usually have a
Okay.
good group. I got 8 reserved so far, so if anybody would still like to join us, just let me know, and we'd love to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Next Thursday is Dr. Edward Curtis and the Very Reverend Anthony, I'm going to mess it up, Yazdi, who will be, we'll talk about Arab Indianapolis. Indy's first Arabic speaking neighborhood was in the 1900s near Lucas Oil Stadium. The FYI documentary and the St. George Middle Eastern Festival in September. There's one in Zoom. Explorador will talk about the $2,500 grant that enabled them to secure a student intern. Mandy Bender and Kara Covert Prey of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway will join us in September at the Columbia Club. College Mentors for Kids will also be providing a recap of their $2,500 grant for the Little Buddies program. On October 5th, Doug McMillan of the Indiana District Governor will install new officers of 2023-24. I will be your president. President-elect is Eric Rowland, and the directors Steve Farrow and Art Kodrow. Riley will also join us to share more about the upcoming Kiwanis Giving Opportunity for their Mental Health Initiative program. They talked about this at the district Congress, and it is a fabulous program. So I hope all of you can attend that. Instead of our meeting on the 12th of October, there will be a Codes for Kids service opportunity. We're hoping to pair up some Kiwanians with Key Club, Circle K, and Action Club. You've probably seen advertising about this project and collection sites at Classic Cleaner throughout the city for the Salvation Army to collect 4,000 winter coats. And since I'm the current chairman of the board of the Salvation Army, I would like to see a lot of you there. It's a lot of fun, and it just makes your heart warm being able to facilitate this for kids who are in need. Author Diana Hendricks will be back as promised to join us about her soon to be released book, Taming the Street, the Old Guard, the New Deal, and FDR's fight to regulate American capitalism. It describes how FDR battled to regulate Wall Street in the wake of the 1929 stock market crash and the ensuing Great Depression. Thanks to Graham Honecker once again for getting a great speaker for us. It's going to be on Zoom, and again, it's October 19th, so mark your calendars. Remember, she's the one that wrote the book about Bernie Madoff, and she spoke to us not too long ago. Fabulous. She's such a great writer. Graham is also lined up for January the 11th on Zoom about the 2024 NIT basketball tournament at Hinkle Fieldhouse with former Davidson coach Bill McKillop. And let's see, is that it? That's it. Now we're ready for our speaker. And I'm
That was a marathon of announcements.
I know it was.
That.
Not too many tongue twisters.
I'll let you keep the microphone if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you. I would like to introduce a community outreach coordinator for the Indiana Donor Network, Matt Shirk. He educates the community and soon to be drivers in junior and senior high school classrooms across central Indiana and southern Indiana about organ and tissue donation and what it means when the BMV asks, do you want to be an organ and tissue donor? He was previously the PE health teacher at Shortridge High School for more than 7 years. He also taught for more than 8 years in Indianapolis, Aurora, Illinois, and Broomfield, Colorado. He's originally from Argos, Indiana, and graduated from IU in 2006 with a bachelor's in kinesiology and exercise science. He's an avid Manchester United football club fan, and Atlanta Braves fan. He has a wife and 2 beautiful daughters, ages 5 and 7. Matt, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Anybody know where Argos, Indiana is at?
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it. Yeah, it's very small, northern Indiana.
Marshall County.
Marshall County, yeah, that's correct. Thank you for having me. And thank you for all you guys do in the community with schools. Thank you for the lovely introduction. I would like to share my screen if I could. So if you can let me know if this is working or not.
You are a co-host. You should be able to.
Okay. I'm going to share. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So as Mary said, I am Matt Shirk. I'm from the Indiana Donor Network, and we also work with Indiana Donate Life. Our mission is saving, enhancing lives through organ, eye, and tissue donation. A common misconception, though, and I always say this in our mission, is when it says eye, a lot of people think that you donate the entire eye. I just want to get it out of the way. That is just your cornea, believe it or not. And we'll go into a little more details on that as well. And if anybody ever has any questions during the presentation, feel free to interrupt so I can answer those questions.
Matt, if you want to make that full screen, we
Yes, I can
bring
do
the
that.
slide
Yep.
larger. Thanks.
No problem. Is that better?
Perfect.
Awesome. So who is Indiana Donor Network? For those of you that don't know, we are a nonprofit organization. We're one of 58 OPOs in the nation. So you're thinking, okay, there's only 50 states. How's there 58? Well, depending on the size of the state, some states have more. Believe it or not, Ohio has 4. So probably not a state that you would imagine would have extra, but Ohio has 4. I've never really been told exactly why, other than it just 4 have been created and 4 are used. We currently are the only one in the state of Indiana. And our jobs primarily, we have a lot of jobs, but our primarily jobs are to serve the link between patients waiting, so transplant list, and potential donors and their families. We work with Indiana hospitals and transplant centers to provide hope and healing for families through donation and transplantation. We provide an aftercare program for donor families and facilitates the communication between donor families and transplant recipients. This is a really a key part of our organization, just reaching out to families who have donors and reaching out to the families who have recipients and establishing that connection if people are ready to do so. And then my part of the job, we have a whole section that is community education, talking to Kiwanis clubs, talking to schools. 75% of the time I'm in classrooms talking to anywhere from 7th grade all the way up to 12th grade. We feel that the impact is most important because they're getting ready to go to the BMV. The BMV, they ask, would you like to be an organ donor? And we want them to make educated decisions. We don't go to the schools and sign them up. We are just there to give the facts, educate, so that these students can then go home to their families and have a conversation, and whether that's a yes or a no, so that when they go to the BMV, they will be prepared for that question. Because sometimes these kids will go to the BMV and they get asked that question and they didn't see it coming, so they don't really know what to say. This is our service area that we cover. Like I said, we're the only one in the state of Indiana. Now you'll see a couple up here by Chicago, Cincinnati, and Louisville. Those are actually carried over, taken care of by the Ohio chapter, the Kentucky chapter, and the Illinois chapter. And it's all based on population closest to big cities. But as you can see, we cover majority of the counties. And then me particularly, I am central Indiana, and down in the south, we have someone in South Bend and in Fort Wayne. We actually have an office in Evansville as well. But currently I just travel back and forth to that. So who is Donate Life Indiana? So if you've ever been to any of our events or expos where we're set up, sometimes we're there as Indiana Donor Network, or sometimes as Donate Life Indiana. This is a separate nonprofit organization that is managed by us. You'll see these symbols. Each state has their own Donate Life, and then there's a Donate Life America. And basically what Donate Life Indiana does is it manages the registry. So when you do say yes at the BMV, they manage that. And then we also have that, they help promote donation and saving more lives through our community education. So a lot of times I actually go out for Indiana Donate Life, especially when I go to the high schools. So our community outreach and education, these are the 4 areas that we try to hit as much as we can. Those less likely to be registered. And this is all based on surveys and data that we have. We have underrepresented and underserved communities. So we try to hit those as much as we can. We try to hit those that are making timely decisions, such as our 14 to 18-year-olds, as I said before. We've also seen an increase in, well, it's actually a decrease in those registered at the 55 plus age group. And what we're finding out is people think that they are too old to register. They think that there's an age limit, so they start to say no, or they have this misconception that they're too old and nobody, you know, their bodies just wouldn't be worth donating. And so we are trying to hit that 55 plus age group to let them know that that is simply not true. And then we also try to hit influencers and community leaders, which is this group. We see that you guys are out in the community doing great things. So we hope that by me presenting to you that you can get these facts, and then you guys can go out into the community and spread those facts, because a lot of reasons why people do not donate is from myths. They hear different myths, and our job is to go out and educate, and so hopefully people make an educated decision versus one that's based on a myth. So speaking of myths, this is an actual did you know that anyone can sign up as an organ and tissue donor regardless of age or medical history. Again, we're seeing a lot of people saying that they're too old. Our oldest donor was actually 103 years old, believe it or not. And it doesn't matter what you may think your body is, you'd be very surprised. People who have previously had cancer, who are no longer, that are cancer free, can actually become donors. It's just really saying yes, putting yourself available to be a donor, and then letting the experts decide when the time comes. Here's some data that I wanted to share with you guys. This shows all of the organs and the number of people that are waiting for transplants. So you can see nationally, it's broken down. There's about 103 people nationally that are on a transplant list. And you can see that kidneys actually is the #1 need. And it's also broken down in Indiana. And this is important because organ transplantation, you pretty much have to be within a certain area. Organs do not last very long outside of the body. So it's one of those where the reason we are breaking it down in Indiana is because, yes, there's a need all over the nation, but our focus is usually Indiana and the states surrounding it. So as you can see, there are a number of people waiting, almost 1,200 in the state of Indiana waiting for organs. And kidneys are #1. And which is kind of fascinating to me also is kidneys is an organ that you can donate as a living donor. But there's so much involved in that as far as matching, so on and so forth. But yeah, about 1,200 people. We're very proud that in 2022, we had a little over 1,000 organs were transplanted as a result of about 334 donors. And that is, we're breaking our records every year. So we're getting more donors. We're helping out more people. Over 1,000 organs is fantastic. And then what people also don't realize when they think of organ donations, they forget that there's tissues and corneas. And we have helped 14,000 people last year through tissue and corneas. And I'll talk about what kind of tissues and things like that as well. And you'll see that there's a discrepancy in the numbers of donors for organs and for tissues. Sometimes a donor may not be eligible for organ donation, but they are for tissue donation. Maybe the doctor discovered that the lungs just weren't good enough to be transplanted, but the skin or bones were. And this is the transplant list for the state of Indiana by county. I always find it fascinating. People like to see, which county maybe they grew up in or where they live, and see how many people are actually waiting and hoping that they can get off the transplant list. It's, as you can see, it's not really surprising that, you know, Hamilton County or Marion County are going to have high numbers because it's a high population, but you can see that it's spread out all throughout Indiana that people are on their waiting list. So how can you help? Again, spreading the word, and I'll go over some facts that you can share when you are out and about, and if you hear people talking about registering for donor, or why they don't want to register to be a donor, you know, just giving them the facts, setting them straight if they say something that you know isn't true. Let people know how they can sign up to be a donor. There's a few ways I'll talk about in the next slide, but the main one is at the BMV. I know the state of Michigan just passed a law that on their taxes, they can actually register to be a donor. And I believe, if I read it correctly, I apologize, I don't know for sure, that they will get a tax break for registering to be a donor on their taxes in the state of Michigan. I don't know if Indiana is going to be following that. I don't know if anybody knows for sure that's in the chat that could reiterate that, but I did read something on that recently. A new law that passed in Indiana is that anyone who holds a professional license, such as a physician, when they go to renew their license, they will be asked if they want to be an organ donor or not. So that is a big step in getting that question out there more, because, you know, you go to the BMV every 5 years. Well, a lot can happen within those 5 years. But you can also sign up on our website, and then you can also sign up on your phone. If you're tech savvy enough, there's on iPhone, there's a Heart app that you can actually sign up that way. And you can always reverse it on those website and the phone as well, and at the BMV if you choose to do so. A very big one of how you can help is tell your loved ones your decision. Make sure you tell anyone who would be involved or possibly be involved, to let them know whether you've said yes and whether you've said no. Because a lot of times people don't know, and then they get approached at the hospital saying, we're so sorry that your loved one has died. They were registered to be a donor, and people are kind of shocked. Or they'll say they weren't registered to be a donor, and then they're going to get asked that question, would you like to register them as a donor? Would you like them to become a donor hero? So it's very important to have this discussion. It's not an easy discussion always, but it is a very important discussion to have. That way people are prepared. And we would love to activate at one of your community events, like what we're doing now, or if you guys have those events that you guys are doing in the future. We'd love to present to any stakeholders or staff, or provide educational material. I can send all sorts of stuff. If you don't feel comfortable spreading the word yourselves, by all means, I would love to come and do that. So what if you don't go to the BMV? As I said, here's the website. It's donatelifeindiana.org. And then there's a health app on your iPhone as well. So we always, especially at the school, that's a big one. The kids go, oh, that's interesting. Another interesting fact that I did not say was, if you are under the age of 18, you can sign up to be a donor, but it ultimately is your parent or guardian's decision if you're under the age of 18. So we tell that to our students as well. That's why it's really important to talk to their parents or guardians and say, I want to be an organ donor. So please, if that unfortunate event happened, they're going to ask you and it's going to be your decision, please go with yes. Another little did you know I'll throw in here, signing up to be a donor will not affect your medical care. Doctors and other medical staff will always do everything possible to save your life. I throw this in there because that is probably the #1 myth of everyone, regardless of age. That myth has been around for years. It was around when I was a kid. I remember people saying, oh, if you sign up to be an organ donor, you know, the EMTs will arrive and they won't try and save you because they want your organs. That's not true. Medical staff, EMTs will have no clue whether you are an organ donor or not. They are there in an emergency situation trying to keep you alive. And then unfortunately, if you were to pass away and were eligible to be a donor, then your family would get approached by one of our staff at the hospital saying, well, they were registered to be a donor, so they were going to be a donor, or they weren't registered to be a donor, would you like for them to be a donor hero? But that's not until after medical staff does everything they can to try and keep you alive. So why would you want to sign up? And I always say to my students, I say, you know, one person can save and impact 83 lives. Now, it is rare that that one person actually hits the number 83, but you can hit up to 83, and it does happen. So of the 83, there's 8 life-saving organs, and then there's 75 people that you can impact through bone and tissue and corneas. So the organs that you could potentially use to save someone's life would be heart, 2 lungs. It can be transplanted that both lungs, or one lung goes to one recipient, one lung goes to another recipient. Liver, interesting fact about the liver is you could receive 40% of a liver and it will grow back to full size in about 6 weeks, they say. So that's another organ. It's a little trickier, but it is another organ, a living donor. You could donate some of your liver while you're alive, and both yours would grow back and then the recipients would grow back, but that's a little more complicated. Kidneys, obviously you could donate kidneys to 2 separate or to the same person. Usually they would do 2 separate because kidneys are so hard to come by that giving, and you can live off of 1. So a donor could give one to 2 people. And then pancreas and small intestines. Those are the 2 that people often don't think about, but a pancreas or small intestines. Another one is the brain, but the brain is not. So people think, oh, the brain. When I go to schools and I ask, which organs do you think you can donate? People say your brain. That is not the case. It's just way too complicated of a surgery, and there's some moral issues there as well as far as what would go on with your brain, your thoughts, your memories going into someone else and things, so on and so forth. It's very complicated. So that is not one that we donate. As far as bone, yes, go ahead.
I saw Young Frankenstein, and mine would be labeled Abby Normal anyway.
That's what I tell the students. I always say, I go, I'm an Atlanta Braves fan. If you're not an Atlanta Braves fan, then you don't want my brain.
Yeah, my brain.
But people wonder, and it is not. It's to hook up to the spinal cord, nerves, all that. It's just impossible right now. Are they working on it? Probably so. I'm sure there's someone out there trying to get it to work, but currently we do not. And then we say non-life-saving, but to me it is life-saving, is the bone and tissue and corneas. So with bone, it's legs only. So that's really important for people to know that you will not be donating anything from upper extremities. It is usually the femur bone, the biggest bone in your body. And we do all sorts of things with the bones. We make grafts. Some people get dental implants and they don't know it, but they are actually a donor recipient because they've gotten dental implants that came from bone. Skin is a big one, obviously, for burn victims. They use it for skin graft for it to heal, and then it gets removed, and then they use their own skin to cover it, their burns. Veins are another big one. Think of anyone who's had heart problems who needs surgery, and they get the veins, typically, again, from the lower extremities. Tendons, big advancement is when you tear your ACL, instead of taking your own body parts to fix your ACL, they'll take donor body ACLs, and then they will repair it, or Achilles tendons and things like that. Valves, so this happens a lot where the donor isn't able to donate their heart for whatever reason, but we can still get and donate valves from that heart. And again, for people who may have heart problems that need valve repairs, they can actually get valves from a donor versus from another part of their body. So just less surgery for the recipient. And then corneas. Corneas, if anybody doesn't know, it's kind of like your natural contact lens. It's just right over your eye. It's not your iris. It's not the color part of your eye. It's just a clear part over your eye. And people get confused when we say eye donation. They always say, oh, you take your whole eye. That's kind of, ugh. And it's like, no, it's actually not the entire eye. It's just the clear part over where you would put your own contacts in. And this is a huge one. We always do an exercise where we show what it's like to be corneal blind. And it's basically, if anyone wants to know what corneal blindness is like, it's not 100% blindness, but everything is very blurry. And then you get new corneas, and next thing you know, you can see perfectly fine. I believe one of our 95-year-old donors, what they donated was their corneas as well. So age, again, does not matter. So why do we do all this effort? And this is the big picture. This one kind of blows people's minds, not necessarily the high school kids, but people my age and older, where they see this, they go, oh, wow, this is fascinating. We have about 6 million Hoosiers in this state, and we've got about 65% of them that are registered, so about 4 million. Sadly, 66,000 people in Indiana die, and 21,000 of them die in the hospital every year. So about 22,000 it shows. So as you can see, the pyramid's going down. So we're going down as far as how many people can actually be donors. Organ death referrals. So when someone dies in the hospital, if they are eligible or potentially eligible, we get a referral. And our teams that are in the hospitals. And then of the 12,000, only 334 last year actually were able to become donors for a variety of reasons. You know, we want people to refer. We'd rather them refer and be wrong than not refer and then lose a potential donor. So when nurses or doctors refer a patient that they lost, that they would be a potential donor. And then, you know, the experts come in, our staff, clinical staff, transfer doctors go in and they say, no, actually, you know, the organ, they're, you know, maybe this person currently has cancer that was undetected, or the time of death was too long by the time that they were referred, and the organs would not be able to be used. This is all for organ 334 organ, not for tissue and bone. That's a little bit different, but you can see why we put this effort in is the more people that we get registered, the more people that can actually be donors. And so our biggest hit is trying to get people to register more, and then obviously trying to get more referrals. So we work a lot with hospitals to make sure that they're very timely with their referrals. It's hard. It's hard for doctors and nurses because they're trying their best to keep this person alive, and then they can't. So their next step then has to transfer to, okay, let's turn this negative experience into a positive experience as quickly as we can. And unfortunately, it's not real fluid, but they try their best. And the reason I sent this slide out is because a lot of people think, well, if I sign up to be an organ donor, I'm going to be an organ donor when I die. And that's just not the case. It's a very low number, 334 out of 4,200 registered Hoosiers. You know, so I want to say that to people, because if you were hesitant about being a donor because you think you're automatically going to be a donor, then as you can see, it's very rare, but we want to get those numbers up. Sorry, has there been any questions? I've been kind of going at a steady speed. Any questions so far?
I've got a couple questions.
Yes.
What's the biggest pushback? Is it religion? Is it the myths that you talk about, that they just weren't educated?
Yes, it's through uneducated, because they're hearing the education through myths.
Okay.
And death is a hard subject, right? Nobody wants to really think about death. Nobody, you know, it's the great unknown, right? I had a gentleman say, you know, I don't know what's gonna on the other side. I don't know if I'm gonna need them or not. And you know, when I heard that, I said, you know, I have to respect your answer. I can't really, I wish I knew what happened on the other side, but I don't. But a lot of the pushback that we're seeing right now is 55 plus thinks that they're too old. A lot of them, the myth is, oh, I thought there was a age cutoff. I don't know. We don't know where that myth popped up. And then there's the, they're not going to do all they can to save me if I was to die, or if I was dying. They think that the medical staff is in it to transplant organs. Religious pushback is not as high as you would think, believe it or not. We've actually reached out to all the major religions in the state of Indiana, talked to their religious leaders, and have gotten okays from all of them. And we actually go and educate at their functions, saying, hey, this is, you know, it's okay. There's no religious backlash that we've gotten.
Okay.
So,
My second question is,
Yep.
and the reason that I said, hey, you should come talk to us. Several months ago on NPR, there was a program about the issues with the at the national level with bias in the programming of who gets a kidneys, I'm assuming,
Yes.
or not. And then in the Indianapolis Star, a few months later, there was an article. Can you talk about that? What the issue is? What's being done to correct that?
Yes. So it's way more complicated than what it seems as far as how the list goes. A lot of people think of list, they think, oh, I'm number 1 on the list, I'm always going to be there. The list is very fluid. I can actually scroll down here, and how they match it is through all of these things. So severity of the illness is obviously high up. I will start out saying that we, and this is a pat on our own back, is Indiana, we have done a fantastic job of increasing our donations. Nationwide, the issue was they're kind of stalling, and that they're saying that it's discriminatory towards certain groups. Indiana, we have not had that. Our numbers are showing vast spread, which is great. When it comes to the computer system, what they're thinking is happening is it's coming down to match types. So blood type match. The big one is this human, and I can't ever say it correctly, the HLA tissue type. And with that, that's the big, seems to be the big issue, is typically that tissue type, you're more likely to have a match within culture. So African-American culture would have a better tissue type, HLA, with an African-American donor and tissue recipient, if that came out correctly.
So are you saying that a particular, let's say the African-American group does not donate as much as other groups, and like Asians or Caucasians, and so therefore, even though they have maybe a higher need because of generalized history of hypertension and maybe needing kidneys, that they're not matching because they don't have the HLA grouping that they need?
Exactly. That's what they're looking into. And what we do know is we have low registration numbers within the African-American community. And a lot of that is through myths as well. And rightfully so. I mean, not the myths, but rightfully so, that they're scared to necessarily trust the medical community because of things that have happened in the past. So we're trying to break down those walls. We actually have a multicultural community, basically essentially me, that goes specifically to multicultural events. We have a bilingual multicultural event specialist as well. So we go to certain schools, certain events to help break down that barrier, help build that trust, because we want more people to register to be donors, so we have more of a chance of matching those those blood types. So the people on the wait list, and the minorities, so to speak, on the wait list will have a better chance of matching. But again, some people are arguing that, and that's why it's making the news. Some people are saying that, you know, the system isn't doing that correctly. I don't know. I don't have the expertise on that as far as how the computer system works. My understanding is the computer system is very sophisticated, and things are always changing. As far as, again, just because you're high on the list doesn't mean you're number 1 on the list. You may be high on the list in Evansville, but if the donor is located in Chicago, it might not work out that you actually get the organ. So what we're trying to do is increase the number of registered donors in the minority group, which then we hope will increase the number of minority transplant to get, if that makes any sense. But as you can see, there's so much that has to go in. Body size is another thing. Severity of the illness. Another study that they're trying to see if this is true is, in order to move up the severity, you have to go to your appointments. Well, people may lose insurance, and so therefore, even though they're extremely sick, may miss their appointments because they feel like they can't afford it. Maybe they don't have the transportation to go. And if you don't go to your appointments, the doctor can't say, oh, you went from you're on the wait list. Now you really are on the wait list. Like your severity has gone up since the last time I saw you. And if you know, they're not being seen, it's hard for them to move up the wait list if they're not being seen and they're to show that the severity of their illness has gone up, if that makes sense as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then obviously the distance from the donor to the recipient is a key. So it's very fascinating. I get to shadow pretty much every department here, and it's very fascinating to see how they go about trying to match donors. And it really is, when I say that taking a negative of someone dying and turning it into a positive as they become a donor, of what it's like it's really a miracle how even the bodies can accept these donations, for one, and then just all that goes into play when it comes to blood type, HLA, body size, severity of the illness, distance of the illness. And you know, your organs can only survive so long outside of the body too, so everything has to really move very quickly.
Okay, we've got some. Go ahead.
Oh yes, it's time. So yeah, any other questions?
I was gonna say Doug has his hand, and then I think Laura put hers up, so we can field a few.
Sorry, I couldn't see that part of it.
No,
Sorry.
no, you're
Okay.
you're totally fine.
I just wanted to make a couple comments. I was a little late jumping on here, but I'm very familiar with the subject.
Excellent.
Mainly because as a pilot, I used to fly up until my medical issues in the last year, but I flew for Angel Flight as well as flying. Most of the time they're flying the recipient rather than the donor. You know, I did it a few times where you have the lunchbox with the organs in it on ice and so forth. But most of the time what they're doing now is trying to get the recipient to the same place as to where the donor is, or vice versa. And as far as the organ donors, there's not a better thing that you can do. As far as if you're passing, if there's one good thing that's going to come out of it, is being able to help somebody else. Because I've seen people literally get their world back, their life back, because they got a new heart, they got a new kidney. And I'm not talking 60-year-old people. I've flown a lot of kids that are under the age of 10 that all of a sudden get a new heart. And actually a number of them were going to Riley, but I think they actually do the heart transplants up at IU Health on the north side. But anyway, I've flown all over the Midwest, and I had one out to Boston Children's once, and it is incredible. You know, a donor kidney or whatever, and the family is changed. Yes, it's sad for the donor families, but it's also a cathartic type thing to see, well, I'm sorry that my child died, for instance, but look, it's some goods come out of it. I also have worked a lot with burn victims as a burn survivor, and worked with Hoosier Burn Camp for many, many years. And, you know, that is incredible to a kid that goes through skin grafts. And my best way of explaining the whole discussion about, you know, being biased, you know, you have that chart up there, which has all the blood types, and you can kill somebody by having an O negative and putting them in an A positive. The same way as putting a kidney in that doesn't match up based on the human leukocyte antigen. So it's like a blood type. That's the way I've always explained it, is it has to be a match for the tissue. Otherwise, you're wasting the organ and somebody else could keep it and could make it work. So I just wanted to throw my own personal. I've flown a lot of people around that were getting organs, which is cool. It was one of the best things I did as a pilot.
Yes, and we have our own pilots on staff that do exactly what you're talking about. Thank you so much for what you did do and for speaking on behalf of saying yes.
You need another pilot?
I'll check.
With no
Yeah.
license?
Huh?
What's that?
With no license?
Well,
Oh, I've got my certificate. I just got to fight with the FAA over my medical.
no license might be a little hard for me to pull off, but otherwise I'd be flying around, I'd be helping out too, but no.
No, I still have my certificate.
Excellent. If you're serious, you can reach out to me. I'll sit my information at the bottom of the slides here.
Okay.
Awesome. Laura, you had a hand up and then we'll go to Art.
Sure. Well, that's wonderful to hear. That's amazing. What service to do for such vulnerable people. And I also was amazed that you're going to high schools and educating the young people about this decision and opportunity. And I was wondering if you know of any ways to activate our high school age service leadership program, Key Club. So there's, tons of volunteers that are wanting to help their community, basically make a difference. And they just kind of need ways to volunteer. So if you can think of, since you have some experience talking to high schools, if you could think of ways, we would be really interested to hear. We sponsor 3 Speedway, Perry Meridian High School, and Shortridge. That's just the high school age.
Sure.
Yeah. So they're ready to volunteer if you can think of ways. It could be that they could just help you reach your mission.
Yeah, I will definitely reach out to our community development with this. I'm trying to think off the top of my head what we would do normally with students. I'll get back to you. Okay.
Hello.
That's great. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I will say, to piggyback on why we go to schools, another reason that we get so many schools signed up is it is a state law. It's part of the health standards. If you're a health teacher, you have to teach this. Now, some teachers teach it on their own because we have an online curriculum that we send out and they can do it on their own, but majority of them like to have a guest speaker. And a lot of times I like to bring an advocate, which is either someone who is a recipient or someone who is a loved one who was a donor. And that's really impactful for the students. I could have brought one for this conversation as well, because hearing the story of someone who actually had a loved one who was a donor, or someone who actually is a kidney recipient or a liver recipient is pretty impactful. But so to go off what you're saying, we go to all the schools because it is actually state law that this teachers have to cover it in their class, in their courses. So, but I'll get a hold of you as far as how we can reach out to those kids, especially when we go to those schools to present how they can help us in any way.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Art, you're up next.
Just had a quick comment and then a question.
Okay.
My comment is I grew up in Philadelphia and I'm a lifelong Phillies fan. So you and I are not compatible for that. But anyway,
don't curse at me. I know that
trust me, I won't.
Crazy.
But also I appreciate you mentioning about telling your loved ones, because that's something that's probably important, and it obviously is important, but in my case, I haven't done that enough. So I appreciate that comment. Well, my question is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but assume that in Indiana, when you renew your driver's license, you have to opt in to be a organ donor. Has there been any consideration of saying, well, we're just going to have everybody be in automatically unless you opt out, as a way of increasing the numbers?
Not that I'm aware of, but I like that idea, because I'm constantly thinking of how can we get that question out more often. Again, I go to a lot of senior expos and events, and I get people who are really interested, And 5 years is a long time for certain ages that could happen. And so if they're not going to the BMV, I always think of my dad. My dad is 72 years old. And if he was a no right now, which he's not, I know that my dad wouldn't say yes until he went to the BMV again. He wouldn't go on his phone. He's not, these phones, he's like, no thanks. He doesn't have a computer. So the next time he would get asked that question would be at the BMV in 5 years. Well, he's 72. By the time he's 77, a lot can happen in that time. And I would, so I'm trying to think of ideas of how we can get that question out more often. And the only backlash is then, well, people could say no more often then as well. So where you're saying is that they're automatically a yes, and they have to say no. I'm guessing, I've never heard that question. I'm guessing it's all down to morals, like a moral
Sure.
dilemma of, well, we're making that decision for you versus you having the power of choice. But I'll
I'm
bring
saying
that up
you would,
because that's
you would still get asked that question.
right.
It's not
That's
like
true.
you wouldn't get
Um,
asked,
Yeah,
would be my approach on this.
right. I like that idea. And I'll bring that up, but I've never heard, I've never heard that approach, and I'm guessing it's down to moral obligation of, even though they're getting asked, you've already pretty much decided for them if they don't know that. Somehow we'd have to let them know, you are a yes right now, would you like to continue to be? So yeah, that would be up to the lawmakers at that
Mhm.
point, but I like the idea because that would definitely increase our numbers. If you are a no and you're over 18 and doctors, just said, okay, they go to the family, say, sorry, we lost your loved one. Then they would get approached by one of our staff, and our staff would say, they're not right now registered to be a donor. We're so sorry for your loss. Would you like to consider them to become a donor hero? So even though they say no, they will still get that opportunity through their loved ones. And then essentially, that's why it's important. If you're very adamant that you do not want to donate tissue or organs, please tell your family, because they're going to get asked whether you're a no or yes. And if you're a yes, it's not asking, it's so much as like, hey, just let you know they were a yes, they're going to be a donor. Hopefully they'll be able to save a lot of lives. So
Thank
we
you.
do ask twice, once at the BMV and then once upon death, sadly. So I love that idea.
We had a really interesting question in the chat from Richard. He said, if a donor recipient passes away, let's say through a car accident, something non-medical, and the organ is still viable, could that organ be transplanted again? Could it have a third life?
That's a great question. Yes and no. So yes, I'll just say yes, but very rarely. But if if the doctors determine that is good, they will try. They will see if they can use it, but it's one of those preferred not to. But again, when you have so many people on the transplant waiting list, and if it's if it's good, they'll try to use it.
Yeah, I imagine
that's
there's
a great question as well. I want to make sure I get a definite answer if it is a definite no. As far as right now, I believe yes, but it is very, very rare. But we do tell people, even if they are a recipient, to definitely say yes, because chances are they do not have received a kidney and a heart and a liver all at once. So yeah. Great question. I want to make sure I get the definite answer on that, and I will email someone so you guys can share that.
Our job is to stump you. Yeah, if you want to communicate through Mary or
No,
through me, that's great. Yeah. I do want to be mindful of everybody's time, so we can go ahead and wrap up the meeting. If anybody wants to stay on, Matt, certainly if you have time to stay on, and visit, thank you for advancing to your contact information. I assume you're more than happy to hear from any of us. Laura, thank you for teeing up the opportunity to connect with our young folks and our service leadership programs, especially in the high schools. Matt, I cannot tell you enough how much I appreciate you being here today. Mary,
I appreciate it.
thank you for bringing this opportunity to us. A donation will be made in your honor, Matt, to Report for
wow.
America. They're a national service program that connects early career journalists with newsrooms across the country to fill undercovered beats. Thanks to Report for America, the Indy Star K-12 education reporter Caroline Beck is able to dive into issues facing families, children, and educators in Marion County townships and school districts. So we can continue to pay it forward.
That's great.
I also want to thank Doug McMillan, our incoming state governor for Kiwanis, for joining us today and for agreeing to join us to kick off the new Kiwanis year in October by installing our new officers. And finally, I think Kelly had dropped in the chat Project 44, who spoke to us earlier. Was an organization that came out of the Butler family for bone marrow donations. So unlike Donate Life, there is age boundaries on that one, but please consider all of the different ways that we can help our fellow Hoosiers and fellow Americans. So with that, meeting adjourned, and we will see you back on Zoom next Thursday. Thank you all.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank
Thank you for joining.